Burgess here with us today. We welcome you to Nye County and look forward to discussing our local view and our support for Yucca Mountain Project. We are joined here by Nye County Commissioner Tony Easley, Commissioner Lorinda Wickman, and Commissioner Dan Shinhope. Unfortunately, Commissioner Borowski is unable to join us today because he had a previous scheduled commitment. We also want to thank our guests who have joined us here today. We have elected officials from Esmeralda, Lincoln, Lander, Churchill, and Mineral County. We have the chairman of the Plum Town Board, and we have a good friend of mine, former Governor Bob Litt. We also have the District Attorney of Nye County, Brian Kunze, and we have representatives from various representatives of Nevada who have been involved with the Yucca Mountain Project for many years. We appreciate the opportunity to share our views with you and the members of the House Energy Commerce Committee, and look forward to making a few comments and answering any questions that you may have. Congressman Shempton, welcome.
Great. Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Pleased to be joined by, as was introduced, Gene Green, my ranking member on the subcommittee, and Dr. Burgess. They're both Texans, so be easy on us here.
Texas is still west.
Of course, I'm from Southern Illinois, which really is our state capital. Springfield down to Kentucky. I border the Indiana line, and I border the Missouri boundary line. So it's great to be here. This has been my second trip to Yucca Mountain. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it's probably 10 years ago. Of course, there was a lot more activity than there is today. And what my takeaway is, I've been a pretty strong supporter in my 15 years of being a member of Congress, and I think it's because of the trip that I took 10 years ago, or however long it was. And what the trip did today was just reaffirm that commitment. We were given a good tour by some professional federal employees, DOE staffers who really knew their stuff. And it just, for me, gave me faith that we got some of the best minds in the country that have been working for decades on this site. Illinois is a big nuclear state, although I'm really from coal country. I'm all the above energy guy. We have 11 reactors, 6 locations, 6 pools, and I've always been focused on keeping our promise, which is what the Waste Fund was designed to do, which is take the spent fuel and get it into our hands. That was to be completed and being operated, and we had picked a site by law, and for reasons that I think we all know, money's been pulled from the site. I think a lot of people think that the fight is over. Many of us think that it's not, and this is just part of the fight to make sure that the national public understands what a great asset we have. I mean, it really is a great asset, based upon the great tour, the reminder of the billions of dollars, $14.5 billion that we spent, long-time federal land, a nuclear heritage in the desert, underneath a mountain. And as I said, if you can't store high-level nuclear waste there, you really can't put it anywhere in the country. And I think the events of Japan have awakened the public that keeping high-level nuclear waste in pools on site around major metropolitan areas is not a solution to this issue. So I'm going to stop there, but I do want to now turn to my ranking member for a few comments, and then we'll turn to Doc Burgess, and then maybe we'll have a question and answer and maybe some comments by the locals, and then I know we got some media on the line, and we'll take them at the end.
My name is Gene Green. I represent a very urban district in East Harris County, and it's the largest petrochemical complex in the country, second largest in the world. And this is my first time to Yucca Mountain. I was elected to Congress in '92 and have supported Yucca Mountain because I'm an all of the above person too. We need all sorts of energy in our country, whatever's the cheapest. And we have a nuclear power plant that serves my area, and it's the cheapest kilowatt hour. Now, that's hard for a guy from a natural gas and oil state to say it, but we're still going to use natural gas. It's just that our base power in our area should be nuclear. And we have a plant, and it was going to be expanded. One of our problems was that one of the minority partners in it, it was Tokyo Power, and after the disaster, and they haven't withdrawn our application, but it's going to be on hold, so we find out how we can get some more investment in it. But the problem we have in our country is the South Texas plant is one of the latest plants we have, one of the newest ones, opened up in the early '80s. And one of our issues with not expanding nuclear power in our country is what do we do with the rods and the waste. And that's why in 1982, folks before me made that decision, and I want to make sure we have that place to put it. And so this is my first trip here. I'm glad to be here. It's not my first trip to Nevada. My wife and I used to come pretty often, but now in Congress they don't let me come out and enjoy our long weekends we used to. But I appreciate the hospitality, and hopefully we'll go back and fight that battle and make sure we have a location to put our rods. And I'm for expanding nuclear power in our country. If you're concerned about carbon, then nuclear power is the solution. And so we need to do that. It just takes a long time to get those plants up, but when they're running, they are the cheapest power we can have to provide electricity for our homes. And I want to introduce my Texas colleague. I'm the ranking member because I'm a Democrat. My two Republican colleagues, Dr. Burgess is from North Texas, Fort Worth, Denton, all the way up to the Oklahoma border.
I don't think it's any accident that you have here before you oil, coal, natural gas. I have hard-edge shale in my district, and we're quite prolific at poking holes in Denton County and breaking the gas rock up and bringing the gas out of the ground. But I also have a nuclear power plant not too far away from my home, Canadian Peak, which, like in Gene's area, came online in '82. Started when I was in high school in the '60s. Took forever to get up and running, but once it did, the cheapest electrons flowing down the circuit are coming from nuclear energy. We also are set to expand the footprint of that plant. No one wants a new nuclear plant built in the Metroplex, but an expansion of an existing footprint makes a lot of sense so long as you have some way to handle the spent fuel rods. And just like Chairman Yucca and Ranking Member Green, when Japan happened a few months ago, or like a month and a half ago, it really brought home the danger in keeping this stuff on site. We took a trip over to Copenhagen and Sweden a few years ago and looked at their facilities, and their long-term storage actually was short-term storage that had turned into medium-term storage, and we'll figure that out in 100 years, what we're going to do with it. And that kind of attitude was very pervasive. But now that we've seen the dangers inherent in keeping spent fuel rods in pools close to metropolitan areas, it makes some sense, especially given the fact that we've made such a tremendous investment in Yucca Mountain. It makes sense to begin to ask the question again, is there a better way to handle this? And I'm just speaking for myself, this is my first trip to Yucca Mountain. I was astonished that there was nothing going on. I mean, I always thought that we were still working, and it's over, and it can't be over, is my simple-minded opinion about that. I'm the newest guy here. I've only been in Congress 8 years, but I was just absolutely astonished that there's no work going on. So the chairman has called a hearing for next week. I look forward to hearing from the experts that come from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that are coming to talk to us, but I think what you tell us today is actually going to be more insightful than what we'll get from them.
So, turn it back.
Okay, Congressman, there's no one more concerned about the health, safety, and welfare of our community than us. And I can assure you, I would not put my grandkids in danger if I didn't believe that Yucca Mountain was safe. I would be with the mayor saying no. The scientists I have on board and the people that have reviewed and went over all the data that DOE's done, along with our independent science program, I believe that Yucca Mountain can be constructed and operated safely. Open it up to my colleagues over there.
And I just took clarification for the people who are listening. So we are in Pahrump, is that pronounced right?
Pahrump, Nevada.
And that is closer to Yucca Mountain than Las Vegas, correct?
Yes, it is.
By a third.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, it's 2/3 more.
Right.
It got us a half hour to get here, and we still got an hour to get to Las Vegas, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So you are closer.
Yeah. My colleagues, Kirby from Esmeralda County.
My name is Bill Kirby. I'm from Esmeralda County, and I've been kind of a point man for Yucca Mountain for our county since 2003. I've been able to work with all the people that are proponents of it, and I've been able to argue with Bob West and some of the other people that are against Yucca Mountain. And one of my concerns is in the dealing with the people that are against Yucca Mountain is they forget that the village economy could be revitalized and with the Yucca Mountain project that was put in place, especially with the billions of dollars that could be spent on railroads for Nevada that would open up possibly the 95 corridor to 90. We've got one 400-mile road, 2-lane road, and I've talked to many of my constituents around there, Grefco and other companies that have shut down because they can't afford to truck the stuff out. If there was a shared use railroad here, it would benefit Nevada's economy. We'd be able to use Yucca Mountain as one of the places to export the technology of transmutation, recycling, and reprocessing worldwide. We bring the finest minds in the world in there. And we put the people back to work in Pahrump and around this area that President Obama said he was going to do 2.5 years ago, and we haven't got one job back. Okay? And the other thing that's interesting about this, it's a national concern. We have 155 sites roughly in 38 states, okay? And all of them are waiting for an event. And we have one safe place here at Yucca Mountain. It's been tested. It was supposed to be in place since 1997, and it's not in place, and the nuclear industry has been indemnified by the federal government to the amounts of money I can't even calculate. And the waste that's gone on because they haven't opened this thing up and put the nuclear waste there is unimaginable. The stuff is encapsulated in ceramics. It's safe. It's far safer than the chlorine rail cars that run through Las Vegas, and it's not going through Las Vegas. And I was on a town hall meeting with one of our representatives here a while back, and I complimented him on a couple of nice things he did, and then I lowered the boom on Yucca Mountain on him. It was on the radio. And it was kind of interesting, and when I got through, his only response is, well, he says, you know the whole congressional delegation is against it, don't you, Mr. Kirby? And I said, yes, I do. And I said, I really don't know why. He says, well, it's going to hurt tourism, and it's bad for the economy. Okay? Now, I've listened to these guys. I'm an accountant by trade. I try to delight and all that stuff and so on and so forth. And I've been massaged by these people and then trying to tell me why they don't like Yucca Mountain. Well, one of the things I think is they painted themselves in the corner. And sometimes when people paint themselves in the corner, they have a hard time coming out. You know, I have. I think maybe it's happened to me a couple of times, the IRS. No. But anyway, there's just nothing but good can be said about the potential it has for the nation and the state of Nevada. And when I was at back east a month and a half ago at the Western Communities Alliance, most of the representatives from all these states that have these sites were back there, and it was fascinating to listen to them all. There was only one state that was against Yucca Mountain, and they've got lovely salt beds down in New Mexico, and they can't hardly wait to get what we want and need to revitalize our economy at a great cost to the government again, so we can go through the whole bloody process all over again to get this thing started. Okay, have I talked too much? You want me to shut up?
No, I got other things.
I could go on.
We're not senators, but it sounds like a filibuster.
I'm Ray Williams, Vice Chairman of Lander County Commission, which is one of our northern counties that borders on 9 counties. And we've been in the process of studying this since its inception in 1980, the late 80s at any rate. I was a commissioner for 8 years back in the late 80s and early 90s. First visited Yucca Mountain when they had a drill rig on top of the hill, and they were trying to punch a hole down in there, and I thought, well, this is a good place to put this stuff because there's nothing else out there. Our county's gone on the position and would like to see you continue with the licensing, study the project, and proceed with it. And it's primarily because it's in the best interest of the country. We do need a place. I've been to several of the sites, the wet storage sites. I've never been to any of the dry storage sites. Maybe this salt bed we're talking about is down at Alamogordo. I think I was down there in that hole one time where they have low-level waste. But Hanford, Washington was the one that astounded me the most because you walk out there and you just got miles of pools of concrete tubs with the spent lives. And I don't think the Columbia River is ever going to have a tsunami and come down through there and wash all this stuff out. But that's the kind of stuff that could come here. And I think that I'm just speaking for the residents of our county because we've had several surveys and they've all been favorable to supporting the Yucca Mountain project. And we do appreciate your time taking the time to come out. We've also prepared a letter and a copy of our resolution, which I'd like to give you. Take that with you.
Thank you.
I'm Vice Chair of the Mineral County Commissioners in Hawthorne, Nevada. And I can't speak for the entire board other than to say that we do support, and we have just recently passed a resolution supporting the completion of the license application process. How are you going to know if it's safe or not safe until that's completed? And I think over the last few years, or probably the last 8 years, we've had our Nuclear Projects Office uses National Honor Society students to conduct a survey every year. And every year, it's been at least an average of 87% support of Yucca Mountain. And I represent the residents of Mineral County, and if that's what they want, I'm behind them supporting Yucca Mountain.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Rex Massey, and with Churchill County, and our Commissioner Carl Urquiaga couldn't make it today, so we apologize for not being able to be here. Churchill County is, I think, like a lot of Nevada, they're pretty practical people, and I think the people of the county, and we've done a lot of these surveys, they really understand the connection between nuclear power, Yucca Mountain, energy independence, and those things that are critical to the nation moving forward. So they understand the role of the repository as something more than a dump. And I think they have a little bit different view than a lot of people in Nevada because there's a large military contingent there, especially the Navy, and I think a lot of the people who live there have been on nuclear-powered ships. So things nuclear are not as scary to those folks as they may be elsewhere. And we're in the process of this license review and application, and I really think the county would like to, and they've passed a similar resolution, is to move forward with the licensing. Let the chips fall where they may, and then let Congress decide what they're going to do with the repository, either fund it or don't. And if you don't fund it, go pick another state, because there's plenty of geologic formations that would be acceptable for a repository. But I guess our message is to move on with this process and get moving. Because really and we don't know this for sure, but we suspect that the burden of the delay in the repository program, the burden of selecting another site and going through all that, spending billions of extra dollars, is probably going to fall on the taxpayer. I think it's going to be very difficult to ask ratepayers to come up with money that they've already spent on a law that exists, that's still enforceable, and they've already funded that law once. I think it would be pretty difficult to go and ask ratepayers to do that all over again at the cost of billions of dollars. And then at the same time, as the repository is delayed, you have all the costs associated with not meeting the standard contract and for utilities to store waste on site. So just as really looking at it as a practical matter, I think the commission would agree with me is that we need to move forward on this thing one way or the other, solve the problem. We're always going to need a repository in some form to store waste. There really aren't other alternatives, and we're going to spend a lot of taxpayer dollars trying to do something else or looking at other alternatives. We're going to spend a lot of taxpayer dollars doing that. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Tommy, Lincoln County?
I'm Tommy Rao, Chairman of the Lincoln County Commission, and I live in Caliente, which is the rail route that was chosen, the Caliente rail route. I feel that this process of licensing is going to tell us whether the repository is going to be safe. If it continues to get licensed, we'll know by the entailed debt that they're going in on this licensing. It doesn't answer too much of the licensing on transportation. I think a little bit more of that needs to be gone over. But we have come up with a rail route that's a little different than the Caliente rail route. It's still routes the same way, but it just skirts a couple of different mountain ranges and makes it more feasible for some of the people out there and has less restraints to it. Personally, I feel that storing nuclear waste in Yucca Mountain in a retrievable storage area like that is much more safer than drilling holes down there and setting off bombs like they did in the past. Some of that stuff probably never will be able to be decontaminated. Another thought would be Congress years ago, when they built the pipeline in Alaska, that was quite a controversial thing for all the people in Alaska. But yet, with some funds made available for the residents up there, they still get a royalty off of that line up there. And I think, although the state of Nevada has more residents than Alaska, and it might not be feasible, but at least the state should be able to prosper with something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. One other little comment, Mr. Chairman, was that, releasing their last, what is it, the third report, the NRC hasn't released it?
Oh, yeah.
Their last report, I think that maybe the NRC chairman is not wanting to release that report to the public and to Congress, because it's probably going to say that Yucca Mountain is safe. And by doing that, by releasing that, he's going to be saying to the president, why am I delaying this when it actually is telling us that it can be operated safely. And I think that's the reason that he has stubbed his nose at Congress of not releasing that document, is because he knows it's safe. You'd like to say a little something? This is Dr. Vogel. He's a scientist with the program in Nye County. Go ahead, Dr. Vogel.
I wanted to share with you, I had the privilege, first of all, I had the privilege of taking Congressman Shimkus on his tour about 10 or 11 years ago. Yeah. I was a chief scientist on the Yucca Mountain Project for many years, and one of the things that happened to me in my career was I was the scientist who was selected to brief the Secretary of Energy when he made the site recommendation report. And the only thing I would like to leave with you is that one of the things Secretary Abraham asked me was, are the scientists behind this 100%? I don't want to make this decision and find out later on that there's some scientist out there who knows of a reason we shouldn't go forward. And one of my jobs was to work with the scientists and say, if you know something that the Secretary should know, he wants to hear it now. And I got 100%, there are probably 500 of us PhD people floating around on the Yucca Mountain Project. And to a person, they said, let's go forward. It is a safe site. I still am in contact with those people, and every single one of them believes that this country's been done a disservice because the Yucca Mountain site couldn't prove safe. So I'm all for finishing the license application.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, if any of the surrounding counties, if y'all pass resolutions like this, if you could get them to our chairman and our staff, or because we have a hearing next week, and I think it'd be great to put a number of the surrounding counties, because obviously.
Mr. Lacy,
we're from
would
Las
you make
Vegas.
sure that happens?
It's done.
Okay. You'll have it. Former Governor of Nevada, Bob Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We still call him governor.
Thank you.
Once the governor, always.
Well, I voted for him. so
He claims he voted for me, but I don't think he's old enough to.
Oh, yeah.
We love the privacy of the ballot.
Thanks for the compliment.
Well, let me join in my colleagues here and welcome you, each of you, to our state. We're delighted to have you here and to have some objective minds analyzing what's going on out here. One thing that I'd like to mention, you're each from states that have a vast number of counties. When you hear from these counties that you've heard from today, bear in mind Nevada only has 17 counties. And you're hearing from the site county, which is Nye County, and then each of the counties that surround it, I guess with the one exception being
White Pine.
White Pine, Eureka, that I think have similar views, Clark, which has an opposing, more negative view. But these folks represent areas that are vast, that are really populated by the people who are most affected by this project. My background is I served as a DA up in northern Nevada. I served as Attorney General of Nevada, and then as governor. And I'm now in the legal and the consulting business, and I've been involved in this project now for about 15 years. I did work for the Nuclear Energy Institute, helping them carry the message out to Nevada, the more scientific angles of it, and some of the public relations aspects of it. One thing I do want to express on behalf of all of us in Nevada is the funding that's been made available to our counties and to our state, which have enabled us to do the studying and do the analysis and do the work that prepared us to help educate our people. The so-called AULG money that we've gotten over the years has enabled the people to participate and have a seat at the table, and that's been very, very important to all of us. I wanted to say this, that first of all, you've heard, I think, universally here that the key is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission proceedings. I have capacity for those counties in those proceedings, and it's been very, very frustrating for us to see the sort of what I would consider to be arbitrary and unilateral stopping of the process, or almost stopping of it. As you know, the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board, which is the administrative hearing body, has continued, despite NRC saying we don't have enough money to do this. They've continued to take action as recently as today. So there's a really kind of a conundrum in which they're faced. I found them to be very objective, very thorough, very well informed, and certainly prepared to continue to go forward, unless from political policy standpoint, they're stopped. And I think that board recognizes that the Nuclear Regulatory Policy Act, the Nuclear Policy Act as it's amended, is the law of the land, and that this is the designated site which Congress and the President established. The one thing that I would say on behalf of those who live out in rural Nevada is that there's been we've had the opportunity to present what are called contentions to the NRC, areas that we want to see addressed during the Nuclear Regulatory Commission licensing process, having to do with mitigation. Primarily, it's been focused on the transportation side for the surrounding counties and on the first responder aspect. Counties do need the support in those areas, some road improvements and some assistance, financial assistance for those counties with first responder facilities. These are counties that really are very, very impoverished almost, if I can use that term. Very little local ability to underwrite those expenses and costs. And so, but we do have that opportunity in the process with NRC, and it's important that we continue to advance those needs that all of these counties have, including Nye County. One final thing I would say in closing is that one of the frustrations we've had is that people of Nevada feel there ought to be some benefit to come to them from hosting this site, because we produce no nuclear waste of our own in Nevada or spent fuel. And there's been no point of contact. Nobody can speak for the federal government in, quote, making a deal. Department of Energy doesn't have a budget to talk about that. The White House can't do it unilaterally. Nobody in the Congress has ever come forward and said, okay, we're the point of contact, we'll deal with you. Let's talk about the kind of benefits that can flow here in terms of future research and development or other sorts of benefits, which I'd be happy to go into some concepts on that if you wish during the Q&A. But finally, I would say that we see most of us in Nevada, despite what you hear from some of our federal representatives, most of us in Nevada who live closest to this project really see it as an opportunity. They see it as the creation of a Fort Knox, as a valuable commodity being placed in that mountain, a real treasure that someday will come back out to be reprocessed and benefit all of America.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this. My name is Lisa Mayo Doriso. I am a business owner, mother, wife, activist from Las Vegas. And I have had moved to, I was in the oil industry for 12 years. As an economist, I worked for a Petroleum Oil Company and consulted to Freeport-McMoRan and Chevron and Arco and several different companies during that career. And when I moved to Las Vegas, there wasn't an opportunity for me to work in our business, so I switched my career to opening my own firm. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, so I grew up just a hop, skip, and a bike ride from Rocky Flats. And I grew up right there. My mom used to take us as kids down to watch the celebrities get chained to the fence when they were protesting. Let's go see them. Have always been an advocate for clean fuel and nuclear fuel, and I agree with you. We need to look at the entire spectrum of energy and producing energy in this country to lower the cost and to meet our needs and to try to achieve some sort of independence. When I moved to Las Vegas as an economist and as a businesswoman, and my children here, I realized very quickly that we were not a diversified economy. We're a one-horse town with two major industries, and as an economist, I knew that meant we have very little resiliency, very little flexibility. And it took a while for it to prove true, but it has proved true definitely in this downturn and in this recession. So my firm, which will be 20 years old next year, has tried to make our focus on diversifying the economy. We did the World Market Center, moved the furniture industry here. We're working to try to move the aerospace industry here. I've moved a shrimp farming plant here to grow shrimp in the desert, which is going to be wonderful. A whole host of different things, from small business to online business and so forth, to try to move toward diversification. And I see Yucca Mountain, frankly, as the one diversification tool to help us in the middle of this state where we really need to diversify and move industry out of what it tends to be Las Vegas and Reno. We need to start moving industry and different industries toward the core of our state. And Yucca Mountain is a project that, unlike any other diversification project that you see right now during our legislature, diversification is used in about every other sentence. And people are saying, we're going to diversify. And people running for mayor are going to diversify. Now, realizing how long it takes to diversify. My projects can run from 7 to 10 years just to try to get a location. Yucca Mountain is a project that already has invested capital, a lot of invested capital. It has all of the reports and everything that you would send out to a community to say, we have proof that we have a project here. It has one of the things that every business looks for, and that's pent-up market demand. And it also has the ability to calculate a return on investment, which is always that part of diversifying or bringing a business to a community. It's always that, well, what will be the return on investment? So we have come so far, and the commission has come so far, that if I were to look out and say, you know, let's diversify and to try to diversify in something we already have experience in now, Yucca Mountain fits that bill. And I worked for, when I first started my company I started in 1992. In 1994, I worked for a group of people that had the Yucca Mountain contract. Don Williams, Ken Oram, and that group. And I set up the entire research for that. And we did all the surveys through all these counties that showed that people were in support of Yucca Mountain. We tested benefits. We tested all sorts of things. And I was in control of that whole research project and did all the surveys and everything for several years. And when I moved away from that job and they didn't have the contract, I sort of lost sight of Yucca Mountain. And I really do, I think you need to have more people like myself. I have 5 children, I'm a businesswoman, the unemployment rate is too high. More people like me coming out and saying Yucca Mountain is a great thing. We're citizens, we live in this community, we know that we need to diversify, and I would like to, and I've said to be involved, to get more people like myself who are not scientists, but certainly understand what diversification can do for this community and have a track record for being successful in that. So I thank you for taking this up. Nevada needs this. The people need this. The center of the state needs this. These counties, you know, need this, and your efforts are certainly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Gene from Carbon Free Energy.
Yeah, I'm Gene Humphrey, Nevadans for Carbon Free Energy, and we're a grassroots movement trying to organize people in Nevada to understand the benefits of Yucca. We're basically businessmen from here in Nevada, no affiliations with the energy industry or nuclear power or anything else. We moved our companies here from California, primarily for tax purposes. And here a few years ago, when it looked like Nevada was going to start raising taxes, we started talking among ourselves that we better get off the dime. None of us have ever been politically active. But we said we better get organized and do something here, otherwise taxes in Nevada are going to go up. We need jobs in Nevada. And we started to look around for opportunities to create jobs in Nevada locally. And Yucca Mountain was analyzed, and it looked like it was the best prospect for Nevada, for jobs, and for revenue for Nevada. Our project and our grassroots movement, we go out and talk to community groups, we talk to Rotary clubs and everybody else, anybody who will listen, and we're trying to organize the people to show the support, you know, for this kind of a project. Our project is called Nevada Energy Park. In the Nevada Energy Park, we incorporate a trust fund where it accumulates capital in that trust fund, which will be paid out to each and every one of the citizens in Nevada, just like the Alaska Permanent Trust Fund. And that way, each person in Nevada can benefit from the operation of the Nevada Energy Park here at Yucca Mountain. We strongly support the completion of the licensing process. Let the science speak for itself. And then we'll go forward based on that. But incorporated in that, we strongly believe that what should be looked at is a reprocessing option. Because you have 90% of the energy in that fuel rod still left. Why not reprocess it, ship it back out? People say, well, it's not economic, it has to be subsidized. Well, let the ratepayers subsidize it accordingly. Find best available technology out there. The world is using U.S. technology right now through Purex for the reprocessing in other countries, yet we don't reprocess in the United States for commercial side. And what we should be doing is we should be doing that here in Nevada. It should be done at the Yucca Mountain site. It'd bring jobs to Nevada, it'd bring revenue to Nevada. It would solve one of the problems that the nation has, and that is nuclear waste and nuclear storage. By eliminating and reducing the amount of nuclear waste and nuclear storage we have, we don't keep kicking the can to the next generation and let them deal with it. Let's deal with it today. This is the United States. If you can identify the problem, we can find the solution for it. And that's been our approach. And so we strongly encourage the licensing process to be completed. And we thank you very much for coming out and viewing the project.
Thank you. Let me jump in with a few things. This is for those that are listening on the conference call. Congressman Shumka is talking again. We have just noticed a hearing for Wednesday of next week with the NRC commissioners. They'll come before, I think, 2 subcommittees, environment and the economy, which is mine, and the energy and air quality, which is the other one. So I've heard it from a couple of you all, because you're well knowledgeable, you've been following this process for a long time. You want the NRC to make a decision on the licensing. Is that safe to say? If you do want the NRC to make a decision, raise your hand. So it looks like, so in this room, 30 people, 35. It looks like that there is a desire for the locals who are closest, and some from the city, big city, that they want at least the NRC, and we will reiterate that in the hearing. We are supposedly receiving the unredacted report today or tomorrow. Soon.
We may have already gotten it.
We may have already gotten it, and so that's hopefully good news as we follow this up. As we continue to learn about this process of the 9 original sites, only one was in a dry area. This is the only one that was in a dry area, and I think that's important for all the reasons that we know. And I'm glad, and Governor, I'm glad you're here. And we actually have, and one of the reports that you all gave was the state of Nevada's legislative that years ago said, let's do this. But I've heard this in my years of dealing and following, and it seems to me, and I mentioned this on the mountain today talking to some of the DOE folks, but you kind of confirm one of the concerns that have been addressed is that the locals have been left out of this for a long time. And I think you are right to ask for engagement by the national government, and I think you're right to ask for input, help, and assistance. My father-in-law, he's now deceased, worked on the pipeline. He moved from Kansas City, Kansas, for a job as a microwave technician as they built the pipeline. So as you have big projects, people come, and then there are benefits that should accrue to the state that's wanting to take on. This is as I don't know if I said before, but this is a national treasure, what you have here, and it still is, even though there's not as many people on site as should be. You look at the site, it is a national treasure, and I liked what you mentioned about capital and the business evaluation, because you're right on. The investment's been made, the market's there, the trained individuals, the high-paid workforce. It could be very, very. It is a business case ready for somebody, and if we all lose this opportunity, it won't come back here. It may go somewhere else.
The sad part, though, is we've lost 2,700 jobs. And most of those is in my sister county over there, Clark County. But I guess they think that is a considerable risk that they can take. But many people that work in the project here are either trying to find other jobs to support their family.
Well, I just want to follow up our chairman, and we have a hearing next week, and again, appreciate your input, and like I said, the resolutions will help us show that there is local support from Nevada instead of just, hearing from it. I love Shelley Berkeley. I've served with her for a long time on lots of issues, but in the 90s, Shelley and I got on, she knew where I was coming from on energy. And so, but this is a natural resource. It's kind of like I wanted to explore for natural gas in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Obviously now natural gas is so cheap, nobody may want to drill unless they can find oil too. But But it's a national resource, and that's what Yucca Mountain is, because we need that for that, to, you know, to expand the use of nuclear power in our country. And I like the idea, because if you want to control carbon, the best solution is nuclear power for stationary sources. And
Base load is the best thing for base load.
thank you.
We do a lot of wind in Texas, but we also know the wind doesn't blow on the days that it's hot. We need the air conditioners to work. So you're right, we do need that base load.
Some of alternative energy is going to happen, but it should happen on its own. You still have to have base load power.
Yeah.
And the country has to plan on base load power. You can augment it with alternative energy, but it still has to be base load power.
We've
Well,
been here.
both of you, though, I'm going to stress that business case, that this makes sense
Right.
for your economy here in Nevada.
Yes, it does.
And that is probably one of the most powerful messages I've heard on this trip, and one I certainly intend to carry back to the committee hearing next week.
Governor?
Mr. Chairman, one thing that I just wanted to clarify in case there were any misunderstanding about it. Our local governments have had full opportunity to participate in all of this. We're designated under the Act as affected units of local government, which is Nye County and the 9 surrounding counties. And the state of Nevada also participates and has been fairly funded over the years. Our delegation has made sure that we did have that opportunity to participate, to have staff, to be able to engage experts, and to have a seat at the table. So we compliment you for that. The one area that has never been fully addressed is the long-term benefit of, if it's built, how do we somehow benefit from that? And there are a lot of theories on it, how that can be done, but there's never been a process established for how that negotiation might happen.
I missed a few. Alan Benson.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Alan Benson. I served for 14 years as the Director of Communications and Outreach for the Department of Energy's Yucca Mountain program. And I retired from DOE last July when essentially the program came to an end. But from 1991 through 2009, we conducted a tour program. Members of the public, members of Congress, the media, industry, and people from all over the world. And while it may not be a representative sample of people who came to the mountain, the overwhelming majority of the people who came to the mountain, when they had the opportunity, as you did today, to see the site, the isolated nature, talk to the scientists and the engineers, they came away with this notion that maybe this isn't such a terrible thing, that it can be done right, and that this is a good location for this particular program. The overwhelming majority of the 90,000 people who came out to the site. Secondly, talking about what Commissioner Hollis said earlier about the loss of jobs, I will personalize it. 5 people work for me, 5 professional staff, well-educated and highly skilled. Those 5 people are gone. They left the state in the back. Okay. 1 did go to Texas. But nevertheless, those people are gone. And their colleagues, by the hundreds, have left the state of Nevada. And as a result of the closure or the ending of this program, the department was pumping about $300 million a year into the Nevada economy, and that's now gone. And all the skills that went with it. We put in terms of support to the Nevada system of higher education, which is the University of Nevada System Essential. Money, oversight funds to the state of Nevada and the affected units of local government, and funds for payments equal to taxes from the inception of the Act in 1983 until this year, over $500 million, roughly divided about a third. But direct support to the Nevada system of higher education. There is a huge loss of expertise But I can also tell you, and I just want to leave you with one message, that when people had the opportunity to see the site, regardless of whether it was public, just public, members of Congress, the media or industry, or foreign visitors, the overwhelming majority felt it was a good thing to move forward.
Dan Kane?
Yeah, my name's Dan Kane. I was a nuclear engineer with the Department of Energy involved in the design and the licensing. And one of the most exciting opportunities I used to have when I was working for DOE was taking people on these tours. Now, the VIP tours are one thing, but for Alan, I also conducted a lot of them on Saturdays. That's when just your average folks came out. And one of the things I heard many times from these people was, well, you know, we retired here. We used to live closer to an operating nuclear plant than we do to Yucca Mountain. And some people would even get upset saying that we heard from Jane Fonda and Ralph Nader for 40 years, nuclear plants were going to blow up and kill us all. You're not going to fool me a second time. So as Alan says, that particularly among, you know, just the general public, when they came out, they saw it with their eyes, they talked to us that were involved in the project, they came away with an attitude, yeah, this thing should go forward. So that's all I have to add. Thank you for your time.
My vice chair, Linda, do you have anything to say?
The only thing I'd like to add to that is, number one, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come out here.
Yes.
It is extremely refreshing to have someone from other parts of the country come out here to see what's going on with the locals in an area that you intend to affect one way or the other. And to add to what he said, I was one of those individuals. In 2003, I came out. My impression of what was going on about Yucca Mountain at the time was what I had heard probably through the press, maybe some reading. No one that lived close to me, because I was pretty new in the county at that time. But my impression was, my God, they're going to stick all of this green goo under the ground, and it has to be, that ground has to hang on to it for 10 million years, or 10,000 years, or some unconceivable amount of time. When I went to work for the county, which was prior to being elected as commissioner, obviously, but I went to work for the county in 2004, and I had an opportunity to take a tour, my tour guide. I had, through another job that I'd had prior to that, I had met and spent quite a bit of time with a nuclear engineer who is no longer in the field. So I was able to get an education. I took the tour, I looked at what was going on, I talked to my buddy. I said, just what does happen if one of those trucks tips over and I've got all this stuff in front of me and I'm in the car behind it? He said, time and distance. Get away from it, spend some time, you'll be fine. So I'm one of those individuals that took that tour, and I no longer have a problem with it. I truly do commend your efforts to come out here and look. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shannon.
Thank you for coming. I think we've all said the same thing. The resolution that I brought forward with the help of Commissioner Chairman Hollis there basically said we want the process to move. So I mean, if the local population really hated it, as vocal as I've been in favor of it, I don't think I'd have got that many votes.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Easton, would you like something to say?
Couldn't add a thing. I'd be selling past the sale.
There you go.
Some of the press tag along. You know, it seems like the real roadblock. It looks like, you know, there's a lot of local counties that support this project, but it just seems the problem is the congressional delegation from Nevada seems to be united against it. I don't know how you overcome that obstacle. I don't know, of course, what it would be like if they cited this in Illinois or Texas, if your delegation would feel the same way, but that seems to be the one roadblock. How do you mentioned the possibility of some incentives.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're all friends. You know, we agree to disagree on many issues. I know the delegation. I'm from Illinois, but I'm not from Chicago. So I understand this big area, rural area debate. I think, and I think Doc Burgess mentioned it. I know Nevada's hurting for jobs. And this is a jobs issue and a national treasure, and I think that's what we all have to drive, as long as the science backs it up. And I appreciate the folks. We were really treated well with some very knowledgeable, especially Bill, very knowledgeable on the site, who, and that's, I think that's what these tours do. They tell you that people have thought through the process. Not only have they done the theory, but they've done the test. So to replicate the theory, not saying, oh, we think it'll work, but they've done. Last time I was out here, they were heating up part of the tunnel for like 3 years. I thought it was the craziest thing I ever saw. They're heating rocks, but there was a reason, because they had a theory and they wanted to test it, and they tested it, and everything that they theorized has proven. That's why the NRC has to make its call. So the answer is, I don't know. I don't have the answer other than we have to do our part in Washington. There is a majority of support. There are some key, powerful people who, for some reason, aren't behind this, and it's unfortunate. And we'll try to bust through that. I do know that Mike Simpson, who's from Idaho, who is the chairman of the subcommittee chairman of the Energy and Water Subcommittee, and I just happened to be on the floor because what happened in the final vote on the CR was when money officially was not allocated for the rest of this year. Now we can debate the money before that, but he said on the floor, and you can check the congressional record, is that don't take this as a sign of lack of the Republican House majority support for Yucca Mountain. So when we go, we pass our budget, we'll do our allocations, we'll go through our appropriation process, and I know, and I didn't ask him if I could say this, but I'm going to take him at his word. He's got issues too, and we'll make sure that there's money back in the fiscal year 12 appropriation for Yucca Mountain from the House side.
Okay, you want to do your thing with the press?
I think we're doing it.
No, I think
Well,
we're
this
good.
she told me you was going to have something later on, so
No, I think that's what they were on.
Down 41, you got your chance.
Well, we can do one.
Yeah, if you want to do one, we can do that. Great, well, thanks. I know you
Thank
got
you for
some
coming.
stuff. Thank you.